My name is Dr. Chris Jenkins, and I am the CEO of the Oriane Society and the host of the Snake Talk podcast, the podcast where you learn about nature's most feared, maligned, and persecuted animals. I invite you to listen to this conversation, and maybe you'll find that what you perceive as fear is actually rooted in a deep fascination. Welcome to the Snake Talk podcast. We are continuing our student perspectives series, and I've had students from all levels, PhD students, master's students, undergraduates, and now I wanted to interview a high school student who is very involved in snakes and herpetology. So I'm excited for this episode. We have Sam, how do you pronounce your last name, Sam? Sorry.
Schenker.
Okay. I would have mispronounced that, so I apologize. But we have Sam with us. She actually, even though she's up in the bitter cold north woods right now, she actually hails from down near where I live in the southern Appalachian region. But she's worked all over, and we're going to hear about that today. And welcome to the podcast, Sam. How you doing today?
Good. Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, it's very cold here, but I'm glad to be talking with you.
Good. Well, I like to start from the beginning, and I like to hear how people ended up getting into snakes. And so, is this something that, obviously you're into them now, and I don't know if you probably don't want to be called a kid, but you're not legally an adult. So,
right.
But is this something that started when you were really young, or is it something that kind of hit you as you got a little bit older?
Yeah, so I can attribute a lot of this to my brother. He is 10 years older than me. So when I was a little kid, he was in middle school and a teenager, and he loved catching snakes in our backyard at the Appalachians. And, we have a property with a lot of wood. So we would just go flip rocks and go to the streams and look for salamanders. And, looking through my pictures of me as a little kid, there's so many where I'm petting a turtle, or I've got this little salamander that I found in the stream in my hand, or my brother is holding this black rat snake by the head while I am looking at it and being, whoa. And my family, we are travelers. We really like traveling the world, and my dad, he collects art. But we also just like going into nature. So one of my first trips that I can remember, we went to Brazil on the Amazon River, and we stopped at this place where they had a big boa constrictor, and they put it around my neck, and you can see me with this face of awe as this big snake, I'm holding this big snake. So it's been there since I was very young, and I can't even remember those years, but it stayed with me so much so that I really wanted a pet snake. For years in middle school and elementary school, I was obsessed with watching Snake Discovery and Chandler's Wildlife and what's his name? I met him. Clint's reptile things. I was just obsessed. And I begged my dad to get me a pet snake. And he was like, no, pets are way too much responsibility and I'll end up taking care of it. So he was like, you know what? You have to know everything about snakes if you want to try and have a pet snake. So I did some research, and I ended up finding the Amphibian Foundation's Master Herpetology course. And I was in 6th grade or something. And I was like, yep, I'm signing up. I want to take it. And I did. I took the whole course. It's I don't even know, 6 months or something, meant for post-college students. And God, I loved it. I didn't even know what a Sicilian was until they had a whole bunch of lectures about it. It was really amazing. And I can thank Mark and the guys who run that so much for starting this career that I have now made for myself.
Little known fact, Mark, who's the director of Amphibian Foundation, and I took herpetology together in college many, many years ago in New England, as did Jeff Corwin. So me, Jeff Corwin, and Mark from Amphibian Foundation, we were all in the same herpetology class. But anyways, that's an aside. I didn't mean to interrupt you. So you took the Master Herpetologist class and learned, and so did that convince your father?
No. Unfortunately, after I took the final exam and I got my certificate, I was like, okay, I'm ready for my pet snake. And he was like, well, he was not expecting me to go through with this and to totally follow this intent to, take care of a snake. And so he was like, okay, you know what? We like to travel. We like to go explore the jungles. Let's go to Peru. I'm not sure if you're familiar with, I think his name is Matt Cage, but he runs these adventures all over the world. And one of them that year was in Peru, and a bunch of people sign up and you pay and you go into this wilderness and you go look for reptiles and amphibians. And my brother, the one who introduced me to snakes, went with us, and he had a nice Canon camera, and my dad, they used the same one. And I had this little Olympus Tough camera because, we're going there. We might as well take some pictures while we're there. And we got on the bus in Peru, and there were like 7 other people, and they had big backpacks of telephoto lenses and macro lenses and 3 camera bodies. And I couldn't believe it, but one of the YouTubers, Clint Reptile Room, he was there with his cameraman. And I was like, oh my God, I know who you are. I can't believe you're coming with us. And there's actually a video where he interviewed everybody on the trip and like talked to them about their interests and stuff. And you can probably find it still. It's still up. But he came with us, and I was amazed because they say like never meet your heroes, but he was so like knowledgeable, and he was interested in not only the reptiles and amphibians, but these leafcutter ants that we would see all over the trails and the fungus that was growing out of the insects and everything. So it was amazing to have all these experts on the trip with us. And I was like, okay, maybe I don't want a pet snake, because seeing these animals in the wild is so much cooler. Like, why would I try and keep a pet Amazon tree boa at home when I get to watch their natural behaviors? Like, since I was young, I've been interested in behavioral science, and seeing how these animals interact with the world like that, like really for the first time in Peru, was amazing.
How old were you on the Peru trip?
Let's see. That was in 8th grade. I'm in 12th grade now. Oh, shoot. You're going to make me do some math.
Well, so it was, it was about 4 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago. Yeah. So
I was maybe 13.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you have a pretty amazing father. He won't let you get a snake, but he'll take you to Peru. So, that doesn't sound so bad. But you had this interest, but it sounds like it was really fostered by your family. Your brother just kind of, exploring together, and your parents really providing you opportunities. And before we leave kind of that part of the conversation, whatever happened to your brother and his interest in these animals? Did he end up pursuing any type of career around that, or does he still just kind of do it recreationally, like side interest? How did that come together for him?
So he is definitely interested in snakes and amphibians and stuff, but he is a marine biologist. When he was growing up, it was around Florida, and the Florida Keys, and he loves scuba diving. So he tried to go the lab route, pursuing like a master's degree in marine biology, but he wasn't interested in the samples and the laboratory process and everything. He liked the animals. So he has recently become a certified scuba instructor. And he now lives in the Florida Keys and teaches people how to scuba dive. And he loves it. He gets to go spearfishing, which he loves. He gets to do underwater photography, which he's getting more and more into. So yeah, like I can't thank my family enough for introducing me to these wildlife and this amazing like world that I found myself in. But I'm the only one that's crazy enough to, sleep out in the jungle and go look for reptiles and amphibians all night.
Yeah. So I really want to kind of talk about 3 aspects of, what you're doing. And, one being the work with Dr. Reynolds here, in the Southern Appalachian region, and one being your work in Ecuador, and one being kind of the development of your photography and what you're doing with that. So, but how did those kind of happen chronologically? Obviously, you were starting to work on the photography down in Peru, but did you end up building the connection in North Carolina at the university first, or did you end up building the connection in Ecuador first? How did that all come together?
It was actually with Ecuador first. So, Peru was my first dip into photography. But this little Olympus Tough, it doesn't even have an external lens you put on it. It's just it's a nice camera. It's, beautiful quality. But I realized as these other photographers were coming around me with 2 external flashes and their tripods, and I was like, yeah, I'm a little outmatched here. So we took, a year later, my dad had gotten really into this now because he into the
photography part or the herpetology or all of it?
Both. I mean, he was really into the photography, but he absorbs the interests of his kids at any given time. And so he was snakes and frogs and insects especially interested him because they're unique. You don't see them every day like you do birds or some mammals. And he was like, okay, we're going to take another trip to Ecuador this time with a group called Tropical Herping, which is the ecotourist nature photography branch of the Kamai Foundation, which is a nonprofit in Ecuador that works on preserving reptiles and amphibians. And they raise a lot of money through tropical herping for their activities. So I can't remember how we found this group, but we got some different equipment. My brother didn't come with us this time. I took his camera and his macro lens, and we went to Ecuador. And our guide, we had one guide. It was just me, my dad, and this guy. His name was Jose, and he was an amazing photographer, wildlife photographer. He runs this project now called Ex Situ, where he's trying to photograph everything, not just reptiles and amphibians, but mammals on white background for everybody to use. And he taught me how to take good photos with an external flash and with my macro and in day and night. And
so before you went to Ecuador, then between Peru and Ecuador, did you buy all of the equipment and you came with it and he showed you, or was he showing you on his equipment? How did that?
So it was both. My family and I, we don't like to call ourselves hoarders. We like to call ourselves collectors because my dad goes to the flea market every weekend and we have family friends with a bunch of camera equipment. So we had gotten a lot of camera equipment between that time, and we had some old camera equipment that we decided, let's try this out. So yeah, all the external flash I had and the Canon camera I had were new to me, at least, maybe not to my dad's collection of items. But we took all that to Ecuador, and Jose showed me not only on his equipment, because he had different flashes and different lenses, but he also showed me on my equipment how I can use it and make really cool photos and work with the animals in a totally different way that I had never experienced.
Okay. Interesting. So you go to Ecuador and you're doing this tropical herping, And first of all, how was the trip? What did you see? Was it
It was
exciting?
amazing. We saw the Pinocchio anole, which is now rare up in the Mindo Cloud Forest. We started in Mindo, and then we went to the Amazon. We saw some amazing snakes. I know that everybody who knows what the species is will say I'm crazy because they call it the garter snake of Central and South America, but I love the blunt-headed tree snake. It's one of my favorite snakes with the super long and thin body and this massive head and eyes. They're really cool. But we saw one of my bucket list species, the Pippa Pippa. And I had learned about this frog from that course, the Master Herpetologist course. And, Mark, it's like one of his favorite amphibians or whatever. And I was so excited to be in the area where you could find them. And I told the guide, I told Jose, I was like, I want to find this. And he was like, we're in the area. And one of the night hikes, we were walking by this puddle and he was like, I see one. And he jumped in. It wasn't a puddle. This was like small circumference, but it was deep. He literally jumped in knee high and caught this big frog. I was like, these things are huge. It wasn't a female, so we didn't get to see that cool, all the eggs in the back. But it was like a teenage male. And it was amazing. And he was trying to photograph fish at the time. So he had this unique setup of a totally like acrylic box that you could see through and you could put water in and you'd put the animal in and you could photograph it. And it would be like high quality as if you were seeing underwater in really clear water. So that was the highlight of that trip. I was so excited to find that animal and get to photograph it because now that I've photographed it again, I realize that little tool would have been really useful again.
Did you see any venomous snakes when you were down there?
Yes, that is actually very interesting because in Mindo, it was the only venomous snake we found the whole time. We found a toad-headed pit viper, and forgive me because I don't know the scientific name, but it was this big female. And I had never dealt with venomous snakes before. On the Peru trip, we saw a lot of them, but I was like skittish at that time. I was afraid to be working with them because I didn't have a big camera to sort of hide behind. I just had this little thing that all my fingers were exposed. But this time, Jose showed me how to handle them with a snake hook and how to be safe and how to photograph. And then I was like, oh my gosh, I want to do this more. Like, I really enjoyed working with that venomous snake and it was comfortable and it was really fun actually. And my dad was like, okay, don't get too excited about this because I don't want you getting all cozy with these venomous snakes. But it was really amazing. And it made me want to get that certification that, the Amphibian Foundation also has, but you have to be 18. So I was like, dang, I have to wait a couple more years. But yeah, that experience made me really interested in actually working with those animals.
Yeah. And for the audience, the toad-headed pit vipers it's a genus basically of vipers, down in Latin America and, multiple species, but I don't know that much about them, but I don't know if they figured this out, but I think they might be thought to be the only other viper in the Americas that's oviparous. I mean, lays eggs besides the bushmasters. I'm not sure if that's the case. Did you hear that from anybody down there or no?
I did not. I did not hear about that.
Anyways, so Ecuador, great experience. You're kind of on like an ecotourism type trip, but you talked about the Kumai Foundation, and how did you end up turning this passion interest you have, this kind of ecotourism recreation trip into something more like a job or an internship? How did that come together? Hey everybody, I just want to take a quick break and tell you that the Oriane Society is dedicated to protecting some of North America's most at-risk species and their habitats, like eastern indigo snakes in the longleaf savannas, eastern hellbenders in the Appalachian highlands, and wood turtles in the great northern forests. Healthy ecosystems depend on these incredible animals, but these landscapes and species need our help to survive. If you care about reptiles, amphibians, and the wild places they call home, visit www.oriane.org to learn more about our work and how you can get involved.
So the Kamai Foundation does something really interesting and that is really effective, where for their fundraising to protect land and to protect animals and do their research, they offer spots on their expedition for members of the community that are interested and that that have talents in that area, like they can do photography or they're familiar with conservation. So I had worked with these guys before in their ecotourism branch, and my dad got interested in the other branch, the Kamai Foundation, because at the time they were working on their Reptiles of Ecuador project. And they sent a newsletter out about this expedition they were doing, focusing on the eyelash pit vipers of South America. And specifically of Ecuador, because they had been working on this project trying to distinguish a bunch of species that have been lumped together. And National Geographic actually published about that. I can't remember. Maybe it was a couple of years ago. But they sent out this bid in a newsletter, and my dad was like, you should go and you should take your brother, Elliot is his name. You should take Elliot with you. Because he didn't want me going alone at that point. And that was a research expedition, really, rather than an ecotourism expedition. So we were in the Chocoan area of the Andes searching for this eyelash palm pit viper. And the first night we went out... This is still
in Ecuador, though. It's not
in Ecuador.
Okay.
In Ecuador. And the first night we went out, we were out till like maybe 2 a.m., and in that last hour, we found one. We found this big female. She was beautiful, turquoise and green and brown. And so we took her back to where we were looking to our base camp to take some genetic samples, because that's what they were there for. And that was like the first research experience I got with them. I helped them take the tail sample and take this scientific photography set up to get the full body shots that were, I think, eventually used in their book, the Reptiles of Ecuador book. And I just, getting to help with that expedition sort of transitioned from working with their ecotourism group and just going on tours and actually helping their research. And I did that again a couple times. I went on their Bio Blitz, which was in this past March of 2025. And I went on a couple of other trips helping them look for a certain species of dwarf gecko that they were trying to describe as a new species. We didn't end up finding it, unfortunately, because the weather, there was a snap freeze in the jungle and nothing was active. And most recently, in maybe that was August, I helped them looking for some rare snakes, like the Langsdorff coral snake, that they're trying to photograph for their book. But the BioBlitz was the one that really changed it, because we were looking for an endangered species on a property that was about to be bought by gold miners and torn up. Hundreds of hectares of primary growth rainforest were about to be shredded because there was gold there. And they needed to find an endangered species on the property that they owned to qualify for some grants so they can buy the adjacent property. And so with that group, we went looking, and after days and days of not finding much, finding little tadpoles, we found a frog called the spotted rocket frog that is currently listed as endangered, and some say it should be listed as critically endangered because there's so few populations remaining. And we found this frog and we photographed it, and we got sort of proof that this land should be protected. And this has been a project that they've been really working on rigorously to try and raise funds for this surrounding property. And they just literally, I think a couple days ago, reached their goal. And now they've protected this surrounding area so the gold miners aren't going to buy it. And I think helping with that discovery was sort of the transitioning step, because in October, they offered me a position as an intern writing grants for them. I'm their grant manager now. So yeah, over the course of, let's see, that's 3 or 4 years, working with them has totally changed like what I've been doing in this field. It's really amazing. And, I have to thank my dad a lot because he has supported me going on these trips and getting to work with them. But getting to work with them has been amazing. Like, you can't replace that kind of field work with any other sort of experience. It's really, really cool that I get to do this.
Yeah, and so your role with them is you go down and help out on different projects, little expeditions or surveys for this, that, and then as you said, you're working on helping them with grants, and it sounds like, I'm guessing, like U.S.-based fundraising. Is that? Yes.
So, like right now, I'm a member of the Explorers Club, a student member, thanks to Dr. Reynolds. So looking at funds there or at different zoos. We're working on a really exciting project right now that is currently secret, and maybe you will hear about it in the news in the coming year. But also working on a fundraiser for their property in the Mindo Cloud Forest, protecting those harlequin toads, the Mindo harlequin toad, where there's like a handful of survivors left.
Oh, wow.
Like you could literally count their population on your hands.
And I'm assuming it's disease that knocks their populations back.
Yeah. Chytrid fungus. And there's a lot of cattle ranching going on in that area right now that's decimating the one stream that they use to live.
Mm-hmm. Huh. Interesting. So you're working on grants, you're helping out with some field excursions. What do you have any trips planned down there in the foreseeable future, or not so much?
I'm hoping to help this coming year with their monitoring surveys for that toad, actually. Okay. I don't know when that will be. Their field schedule sort of fluctuates depending on what grants come in and, the weather and things like that. So hopefully I'll get to do that.
Okay. Well, let's talk about Dr. Reynolds and your connection at University of North Carolina, Asheville. So first of all, you grew up in Asheville. You still live in Asheville, even though you're not there today. And so tell us a little bit about that. How did you make that connection? And just kind of give us that story, if you would.
Yeah, so I was interested in doing some sort of research when I first got into high school. My freshman year of high school, I went to my biology teacher, who was also the science department chair of my school and ran the research club, which no longer exists at my school. And I was like, I would like to do some research. And considering that we are in North Carolina, Asheville, the salamander capital of the world, I would like to do research on salamanders. Who can I talk to at the university or wherever that I can do that? So she gave me some contacts, some emails addresses at the University of North Carolina, Asheville. And I think I emailed 3 people, probably even the department chair of the biology department there. And he forwarded me to Dr. Reynolds. And I sent him an email. That was probably in the winter of my freshman year. And I was like, I really like reptiles and amphibians, and I want to do research on salamanders. And I've heard you're the guy. So what can I do? And I didn't hear back for a long time. And what I thought was a long time. But now that I have been doing this more and more, I realize, wow, he really responded very promptly in the world of professors. So he invited me for an interview, or, well, I guess what was an interview, but he called it like showing me around his lab and the department that spring. And I guess, I don't know what he saw in me, or, whatever it was, but he showed me around and we talked about reptiles and amphibians. And then that next fall, I started as an intern in his lab, helping him with some, genetic sequencing stuff, chopping up tails in the lab and putting them in the enzyme mixes and, helping the undergrads with their projects. And that was mostly, it was on boas, I think. The Puerto Rican boa, I think, was the first project I ever helped, do some stuff with. And I helped him with some source gathering and information gathering for his upcoming book, Boas of the World. I dove into the herpetological review volumes of 20 years ago to look for all the citations of, whatever boa it was. So that is what I started out doing in his lab for most of that year.
That was your freshman year or your sophomore year?
No, that ended up being my sophomore year.
Got you. But are you still continuing to work with the lab, through your junior year and today?
Yes, I am. So after that first bit of work, he really, we were looking for a project for me to start doing because he trusted me enough now, I suppose, even though I have lit many fires in that lab, cleaning my tools with ethanol. Yes, yes, it is now a running joke that I am just an arsonist in the lab. But we were looking for a project, and he was really excited about these anoles in the Turks and Caicos Islands, the silver key anole, Anola scriptus, that basically nobody had ever done work on. Nobody knows anything about them. There's never been pictures published of them. And I think this is remnant because he's a Losos lab graduate. So his interest in anoles, lingered and now was passed down to me. So I began working with these anoles probably the spring of my sophomore year, just, cutting up their tail tips of all the samples he had and, running them through the whole process, PCR and DNA extraction and, getting the sequences back. I did that probably for most of my junior year too. And at the end of that year, we had enough data to look at, what's happening with these anoles, because if you look at, there are pictures of them, and he has a friend that has been down there and taken photos of the different individuals on different islands. If you were to put them side by side unlabeled, you would have no idea they're the same species. They look nothing alike. Their dewlaps are different colors. Their patterns on their head and their back is totally different across islands. And it's not just a sexual characteristic. Even the males and females across islands look different. It's there seems to be something going on here. So we took a look at what the pattern we were seeing was in the genetic data, and the Turks and Caicos Islands, where they live, and we can't get samples from the Bahamas because their permitting is non-existent right now. So all we had was from the Turks and Caicos Islands, and the TCI are separated by this big channel of water. So there's a group of islands on the right of the channel and a group of islands on the left of the channel. And with The other reptiles in the area, like the boas, which he has studied extensively, and that's how we know, their pattern is that they're more similar within island groups. So they're more similar. The right side of the channel are more related to each other, and the left side of the channel are more related to each other. So that's what we were expecting to see because, obviously there's this giant deep channel of water that means the islands were never connected. But with the anoles, we were surprised to see that instead of, that vertical similarity and relationship, there's a horizontal relationship. Across that big channel of water, the anoles are more related than down the island. It was like, these anoles are like, maybe you'd say, who cares? Like, there's these little anoles, but it's interesting to see this strange pattern appear because these anoles are descendant of the Puerto Rican anole, Anolis cristatellis, and they came up all the way diagonally from the hurricane path. Mm-hmm. So we're seeing that, maybe they're very recent, but there seems to be some sort of divergence. Now, we were only looking at chromosomal DNA, and we didn't have, I say that every time. It's not chromosomal DNA. It's mitochondrial DNA. Yeah, okay. Sorry. That's good. We did not have, the full genetic data information, but we took what we had, and I put in a poster and I put those pictures of all the different individuals across the islands in a poster, and I presented my findings at JMIH this past summer, the joint meeting of ichthyologists and herpetologists. And, I got some interesting ideas, and, somebody said, look at fossil records. And then when I told them I was a high school student, they were like, oh yeah, that's a project for a PhD student. But, everybody kept saying, why don't you look at some museum specimens? I'm sure that some museum has some preserved Anolis cryptis for you to analyze their genetic data. The problem that we have is that there are specimens, and they're all mostly in the Harvard Museum of Comparative Zoology, which Dr. Reynolds is a fellow at, and we could access them. But their genetic data is completely unusable because they're very old specimens, mm-hmm. and they were not preserved right. So that chemical, is it formaldehyde that binds them up, or formalin? Whatever the wrong one is, mm-hmm. that's how they were preserved. So we can't access that data. And we can't look at the Bahamas, which might have an interesting pattern because their permitting doesn't exist. We can't go get samples. And the most interesting islands on the left side of the channel and the right side of the channel are so dangerous to get to. There's either currents or there's pirates living on the island. We just can't get there to get some samples to further look at what is going on with the species. And it's really a shame because obviously, like, to the naked eye, it's like, obviously these are different. And right now we just can't say if they are or not. And these animals, like, they're important for the snakes that live there and for the birds that live there. Like, they're the food source and they're part of the food chain. So it's unfortunate that we can't really continue, at least right now, this genetic inquiry except for sampling more and getting more genetic data from the islands we do have. Mm-hmm. But we're hoping to publish the first photos of these species, of this species singular right now, in a paper at some point. But that is what I have been working on for the past 2 years in his lab, working on this project with the anoles.
Well, that's exciting. Very few high school students have the opportunity to do something like that, or the ambition to do something like that. And I mean, I think that's a good message for people in the audience, whatever level you're at. But just working hard, and it sounds like you've had a lot of great opportunities because of your family helping you. But at the same time, taking advantage of opportunities and have the ambition and the drive to want these things, that all falls on you. So.
Hey everybody, I just wanted to take a break and tell you guys that snakes are one of the most persecuted groups of animals in the world, but we are dedicated to changing that. The Orianne Society works every day to ensure there's a future for these amazing animals. If you care about snakes, wildlife, or wild places, and you like what you've been hearing on the Snake Talk podcast, support us today by donating on our website at www.orianne.org.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the photography, which I'm assuming kind of paralleled all of this. So you had this initial experience in Peru, and then you expanded that with Jose in Ecuador. And so where have you kind of gone with the photography over time?
So at first I wasn't like so interested in it. It was like, I'm going to look for reptiles and amphibians to see them and like look at them because they're so cool. And, I'll also do photography. But now I have seen with, working with the Kamai Foundation and now going to conferences, how powerful just a picture of the animal can be. Because that's what the general public sees. That is what they're looking at. And if you are trying to, let's say, protect a piece of land to save an animal, you have to show them the animal. You have to show that this is worth saving, and worth the money to invest in it, which is a big part of it. So looking back at the photos I took in Peru, I'm like, ugh. I thought they were so cool and so interesting. And now it's like, wow, I really just wasted all of those cool animals, and I didn't even do them justice. So starting with Jose, I learned how to make the animal sort of speak, if you will, like how the pose is an important part of it, and how your lighting is an important part of it. One of my favorite photos, the most interesting photos I've taken, is with one of those monkey tree frogs, and you put the light underneath, and it makes this really cool, like Cheshire cat grin, because with their really bright eyes. So at first, I didn't do much with my photography because I didn't have a place to put it. And a few summers ago, I spent 2 or 3 months making my website, making an entire website where I publish my photography. It's called Scale Snaps. How forward with the name.
We'll put that in the show notes so people can access it from there.
Sure. And I just put my photography out for general use. And, I can say to people like, if people ask me, where do you put your photos? I can give them that. And it didn't do very much until one day I got an email from somebody in France, maybe, who was going to a conference for some zoological meeting of zookeepers, something like that. And he wanted to use my pictures of a Madagascar leaf gecko. And I was like, of course, you can have access to this. And from there, it was like, people need these photos and need to show their audience, whoever it is, that these animals exist and how cool they are. And maybe they just can't go there, or they don't have the skills or the time or whatever it is. And I can offer that. Dr. Reynolds actually asked me for his upcoming book if he could use some of my photos of the Madagascar tree boa and of the anaconda, the green anaconda. And then it was like, I see now. I see why photography is so valuable. And it's also really fun. I get an excuse to play with these animals that I'm finding in the wild, and have fun with them. And it has become so interesting to me, this aspect, this almost social science-y aspect of how your visuals bring your message to your audience. Like, everybody almost dreads PowerPoint presentations or giving a conference talk. But if you have the right images, you can show people your passion, and you can try and bring them on the train of, look how cool this is. When I was in Ecuador that first time, we found some of the most bizarre caterpillars I have ever seen. They were bright orange and blue and obviously very venomous, and spiky. Like, it looked like a piece of coral was walking on a leaf. And nobody would have ever even been able to imagine it or believe it if I had not taken a picture of it and shown it to them. Because it was so strange. Like, what is this thing? Like, I don't even know what kind of moth it turned into, and I would have been very interested to see that. But I have now grown to appreciate the value of photography. And I now, I've kind of been a slacker on, the photo competitions and things like that. Mm-hmm. But I think I have become more artistic rather than just documentary in my photo taking. I have started experimenting with these color cards. They're literally just big plastic cards spray painted a certain color, a solid color, and you put them behind the animal, and you've totally transformed how it looks. Like, you're not doing, like, without any post-processing, you've brought out its colors or its eyes or something about this animal. Like the Amazon tree boa, the yellow variant, if you put a blue card behind it, it's like a piece of art, because this bright yellow is against this blue, and it's really cool looking. One of my favorite photos I've ever taken is of one of the blunt-headed tree snake, that little tree snake that I love so much, with a purple background. Like, the tree snake is looking down on you with a massive eye in the shot. And, if it were just a black background or trees behind it, it would have been interesting. But with that background isolating the subject, it's like, wow, you are forced to look at this animal and how weird it looks with its big head and tiny body. And so far, I've really only done macro photography, and that's what I've specialized in. And with the flash and everything, I've experimented with telephoto, and I'm not very good at it yet, even though I really do love birds. But I'm now appreciating more the fisheye lens. Those photos you see where the animal, the snake, is right up next to you on the tree branch, and you can see the whole habitat. And I was like, it's cool when I was first starting out. But now I see that is how you tell the story of the creature and its habitat.
Yeah, you connect.
I've only been working with just the animal so far, and just isolating it and trying to get people to see how cool these things are. They're not just big, scary monsters with fangs or slimy, gross blobs that are going to give you warts. They're really cool animals. And now I see, working with the Kamai Foundation and, helping try and protect all this land, that the habitat is also an important part of the question. Mm-hmm. And how we interact with it and how the animal interacts with it. So I'm hoping to get more into that realm of capturing that wider image.
Well, I love that concept, how photography, and it can extend beyond that to videography and other types of media, but like how that can be used, for conservation by, just kind of winning people over to how amazing these animals are. And there's an organization, you may be familiar with it, but if you're not, you should check them out. A friend of mine's a senior fellow there, but it's called the International League of conservation photographers, and it's a group of photographers from around the world that do exactly that. Like, they do photography, again, to achieve conservation. So it's kind of an interesting group worth checking out for you. But
yeah, I will do that. That sounds interesting.
Great. So you've had, you're only in high school, but yet you've already, had a lot of these international experiences in the field, helping out. You've done, some fundraising for organizations down there. You've had some academic experience working in the lab there at UNC Asheville. The whole time you've been developing photography. So you've got all these things that you're interested in. They kind of all revolve around herpetology in one form or another. And so what's next? You're about ready to graduate high school. Or you could go a lot of different directions. Are you going to become a professional fundraiser, professional photographer, a scientist, something completely different? What's next in the cards for you?
Right. So that's hard because I love all of the aspects of that. I love the field work, and I love the lab work, and I love the photography and everything. And, this day and age, you sort of have to pick one. But if I can, I would like to stay as a researcher. I'm about to go into college. I was actually just recently accepted to Stanford, which is probably where I'll end up going. And I'm hoping to go all the way to a PhD degree eventually. But my interest is at the intersection of hard science, material science, and herpetology in a way. I'm really interested in this field. It would be called biomimicry engineering, or you can say applied biomechanics. So I want to keep studying reptiles and amphibians, and, insects or fungi, all of it really interests me. But I am also really interested in engineering and thinking about ways to see these animals and what they can do and their unique characteristics, like the glass frog, how, its whole body is see-through. And I'm sure everybody has read that article about how the glass frogs will take all their blood and coagulate it behind, this little place in their body that is shielded by this special skin that reflects light so that predators won't see them. How do they function? How do they keep their body alive without all that blood? How can we use that to help inform and help revolutionize our medical world? Like people who are suffering from, lack of blood flow or a certain condition that means that certain areas of their body don't get enough blood flow. How can we take what's already in the natural world, what nature has already figured out, and just mimic it or apply it or, recreate it somehow so that we can use it? My favorite example is the axolotl. And I know that this is a typical example, and their genome is 10, 15, 20 times larger than the humans. But they can regenerate parts of their brain and their organs, while they're still living. And it doesn't become cancerous. They have this amazing stem cell capability, and they don't die of cancer. They can tell their cells when to stop. And that sort of research, getting to work with those reptiles and amphibians that have crazy capabilities like that is what we're missing in cancer research. How can we use it? How can we take that knowledge and put it towards making the world a better place? I've used medical examples, but you could do this for bioplastics or, clean energy sources. That is, I think, the most interesting interdisciplinary field of study for me. And I've now recently realized that a lot of it is the evolution and the genetics are so integral to that piece. Understanding how these animals evolved those capabilities, where it came into play, and how it was used is going to be as important as understanding what is happening if we're trying to recreate it in the lab for our own uses. And that ultimately, even if it's 10 years down the road and or something, is really what I want to study.
Well, that's exciting, and you've been successful in your life to date, kind of going after things and achieving it. So I'm sure you'll achieve this too. And congratulations on getting into Stanford as well. It's a great school, and
Thank you.
I'm sure you do well. So before we close out here, I like to have all of my guests tell me a snake story. So Sam, what's your best snake story?
Okay. I haven't been in this field very long, so I don't have a cool one like having a new boa species, like waking up with a new boa species on my face like Dr. Reynolds does. But I think my coolest snake story happened in Ecuador when on the viper expedition where we were looking for these vipers, and we got in a car and we drove a little bit to try and look a new spot to look for animals. And we parked on the road, and literally at our feet as we got out were these two snakes in a battle on the little plant knee high. A beautiful parrot snake and a cat-eyed snake were fighting each other. This parrot snake was eating the cat-eyed snake. And parrot snakes are venomous, but not so much to humans as to their prey. And, it was obvious that the parrot snake was going to win this battle. It had already injected its venom and everything. But this cat-eyed snake was really fighting for its life, like biting the parrot snake and wrapping itself around and everything. And it ended up tying its lower body into a knot like a pretzel. Now that's important because it comes back later in the story, but eventually the cat snake, it passed away from the venom, and it laid there as did I say the cat-eyed snake? The cat-eyed snake passed away from the venom. And the parrot snake started eating it. And they were like the same size. Like this was an impressive feat that it was going through. But the parrot snake had grabbed this cat-eyed snake by the middle of its body. Not by the head or by the tail, by the middle. And it was folding the cat-eyed snake so that its tail and head were right next to each other and eating both parts at the same time. Because it wasn't going to readjust and have it get away or something. So this parrot snake was conducting this Herculean feat with this cat-eyed snake wrapped around the plant and everything. And it was eating and it was going along. And then it got to the knot that this cat-eyed snake had tied in its lower body, maybe intentionally, but maybe not, who knows. But it was really struggling because it was hanging there. Like the cat-eyed snake was hanging out of the parrot snake's mouth and gravity was dragging it down. So, and it was small, but it was so fascinating that the parrot snake dragged the cat-eyed snake over a branch so that it wasn't being dragged down by gravity anymore, just enough so that it was draped over and, it wasn't fighting so much. And then it worked its way through the knot. And I sat there, we were sitting there for hours watching this whole process happening. And the videographer was going crazy. We were all trying to get pictures. And I had never even considered it before. This parrot snake just showed that it understood what gravity was and just counteracted it by just, a simple action of, moving it for convenience. But it was decisive, It wasn't like it was flinging around trying to find anything to make it easier. It was one motion, and then it continued eating. And I was like, wow, nobody ever thinks about that. Like, we don't even think about how these animals see the world or how they understand, these concepts of physics. But it was really amazing. And it just so happened that this parrot snake, it's the Chocoan parrot snake, which at the time hadn't been photographed in over 7 years. And this group was really looking for it. And nobody had ever documented it eating a cat-eyed snake before. There was a small paper that we published about its ophiophagy, a snake eating a snake. But it was really amazing to see that entire interaction. And, a little sad that this poor little cat-eyed snake died for it. But it was just amazing. And the pictures were really cool as well.
Mm-hmm. Can people find those on your photography site?
Yes, they can.
Sounds good. Well, that's a great story, and I'm sure you'll have many more as you move through your career, and I'm looking forward to seeing what you do. So, with that, I just thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. I enjoyed chatting with you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This was really amazing.
Yeah, and I just wanted to thank the audience and tell everybody to remember, snakes are animals too. And it's a privilege to see one in the wild.